I think the impact for the community it's just trauma. It's absolute trauma.
Wake up on a Monday morning in August, and the last sound you hear isn't an alarm clock. It's gunfire echoing through your childhood home. For 2 children in Madbury, New Hampshire, that nightmare became reality when the person who should have protected them became their executioner. What drove a mother to methodically shoot her husband and 2 of her children before turning the gun on herself, while leaving her youngest child alive to discover the carnage?
I want to grow up. I want this to be a nightmare. I don't want this to be my life.
Before we dive into this devastating case, please consider dropping a like and subscribing. It helps spread these stories so more people can hear them. Just 48 hours before the massacre, Emily Long was posting on TikTok about overcoming depression for her family. The 34-year-old director of operations at Wingits seemed to be fighting her demons publicly, sharing her struggles with her followers while promising to be better for her children. Her final video on Sunday, August 16, 2025, carried a message of hope. She was determined to beat her depression and be the mother her kids deserved.
Okay, I put makeup on and real clothes for the first time. Basically, makeup since we went to the Cape in July, and real clothes in God only knows how long. So I'm trying to get myself out of this rut. I know that I've said this before, but our kids are definitely struggling, and now I'm starting to notice some changes in our 3-year-old, which is tough because he's too young for therapy. I know that people are going to say play therapy. We've done that before, and I just don't really see the benefit in it. And he's too young for talk therapy, obviously.
But behind Emily's online facade lay a family drowning in unimaginable stress. Her husband Ryan wasn't just battling middle school behavioral problems in his role as a school brain cancer. Emily's TikTok posts from April 2025 revealed someone navigating glioblastoma one brutal day at a time, watching the man she loved slowly dying while trying to maintain normalcy for their 3 young children.
It's just like, okay, now we have totally lost control. At least when he was going through radiation, I know that it's been hard on him. I know that it's been exhausting. His brain is swollen. He feels so many symptoms. That has been hard for me as a partner to watch. But now we're in a phase of monitoring where like reoccurrence can happen, where during radiation, it has totally halted. So I feel a lot of anxiety about that.
Glioblastoma is a death sentence disguised as a diagnosis. The median survival time is just 12 to 15 months, and the cancer's assault on the brain can fundamentally alter a person's personality, cognitive function, and ability to be the parent they once were. Emily wasn't just dealing with her own mental health struggles. She was watching her 48-year-old husband deteriorate while carrying the full weight of their family's emotional and financial survival. The Long family appeared picture-perfect from the outside, but they were living through every parent's worst nightmare. Ryan Long had dedicated his career to helping children navigate emotional challenges as a school psychologist at Oyster River Middle School and part-time instructor at Plymouth State University. Now he was the one who needed help, his brain being systematically destroyed by an enemy he couldn't counsel or reason with. Their children, 8-year-old Parker and 6-year-old Riley, were too young to fully understand why Daddy was getting sicker, why Mommy was always stressed, and why their once stable world felt like it was crumbling around them. The family's youngest, a 3-year-old toddler, was blissfully unaware of the medical catastrophe consuming their household, but even small children sense when something is terribly wrong. Emily's social media presence revealed someone drowning in caregiver burnout and anticipatory grief. Watching a spouse die slowly from brain cancer creates a unique form of psychological torture. You're mourning someone who's still alive while simultaneously trying to be strong for children who don't understand why everything is changing. The financial pressure of medical bills, combined with the emotional weight of being a single parent in everything but name.
But my husband is like processing. I see it as puttering, but he is processing everything. He is listening. He is thinking about every side, every angle. He's always devil's advocate, as much as it literally kills me. He's so thoughtful in his decisions. He's the most ethical human on this entire planet. Like, every single decision that he makes is based on his code of ethics, and it's like so respectful. I cannot even handle it. He's taught me how to be a good partner. Like, he's taught me how to be vulnerable and okay with like relying on someone else. Like, I was never okay with it. I'm still not good at it. How to like ask for help and all these things that he's, through our relationship, taught me. And like, now I'm just like, ugh, what a waste. Like, you don't even get to like live in like the fruits of your labor. Like, you've given me so much, and like, I don't get to like show that to you and share that with you. And I think that's one of the things I'm going to miss, is being able to like show him how wonderful he's been to me, and like he can enjoy that. And I think that bumps me out big time. But the thing that I love about him the most, and when I think of times where we won't be together anymore, like the thing that breaks my heart the most, is like at the end of the night, being together, like either laying in bed or like watching a show or just like hanging out in the kitchen, and me recapping my day. I work in the restaurant industry, so like every single second of my day is absolute chaos. It is totally insane, and I see the most unhinged things. And then like in my private life, like everything that happens to me is bizarre.
But Emily was also hiding a devastating secret that compounded her stress exponentially. Between January 2023 and July 2025, she had been systematically embezzling money from wing-its, stealing approximately $660,000 from her employer. Whether this theft began before Ryan's diagnosis or was a desperate response to mounting medical bills, the psychological pressure of maintaining such an elaborate deception while caring for a dying husband and 3 young children was creating a perfect storm of desperation. What happens when someone who's supposed to be holding everything together realizes their house of cards is collapsing? For Emily Long, the answer would come in the early morning hours of August 18th, 2025, when the weight of her secrets, her grief, and her despair finally crushed her ability to see any way forward except total destruction. At approximately 5:30 in the morning, Emily made a decision that would destroy what remained of her family and shatter a community. She retrieved a handgun from somewhere in their home on Moharimet Drive, a weapon that should have provided security, but instead became an instrument of annihilation. The sequence of events that followed would be methodical, deliberate, and absolutely devastating. Emily didn't act in a moment of passion or rage. The evidence suggests she moved through her house with calculated precision, targeting each victim individually. Ryan, already weakened by his battle with brain cancer, suffered multiple gunshot wounds. Was he trying to protect his children, or was Emily ensuring that her husband's suffering would finally end on her terms rather than the cancer's? 8-year-old Parker and 6-year-old Riley were each shot once in the head, execution-style killings that speak to a level of cold calculation that defies understanding. These weren't crimes of passion, but deliberate acts of a mother who had convinced herself that death was preferable to whatever future awaited her family. But here's what haunts investigators. Emily spared her youngest child. The 3-year-old was left physically unharmed, sleeping in their room while their family was being systematically murdered just feet away. Why would a mother who had decided to destroy her family choose to spare one child? Was it an act of mercy, a moment of maternal instinct breaking through her psychological break, or was she simply interrupted before she could complete her plan?
Is certainly a shock, that's obvious, and saddened and trying and coming together to support each other.
It's just a sad, sad thing.
After killing her husband and 2 children, Emily turned the gun on herself, dying from a single self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. By 8:20 that evening, when New Hampshire State Police responded to the Moharimet Drive home, they discovered a scene that would haunt even veteran investigators. 4 bodies, 1 survivor, and the devastating aftermath of what happens when grief, desperation, and mental illness converge into ultimate violence. That night, New Hampshire State Police officers had responded to what they initially believed might be a welfare check or domestic disturbance, but the scene that greeted them was something from their worst nightmares. Blood spatter patterns throughout the house told a story of methodical violence, and the positioning of the bodies suggested this wasn't a crime of passion. It was an execution carried out by someone who had reached the end of their psychological rope. The surviving 3-year-old was discovered unharmed, but alone in the house with 4 corpses. Imagine being that young child, waking up to silence where there should have been the sounds of breakfast being prepared, cartoons playing, or siblings arguing over toys. Instead, there was only the terrible quiet that follows unspeakable violence in a home where Daddy had already been slowly dying and Mommy had been quietly unraveling for months. Attorney General John M. Formella's office moved quickly to coordinate the investigation. This wasn't just another domestic violence case. The systematic nature of the killings, combined with Ryan's terminal cancer diagnosis, Emily's public social media presence documenting their struggles, and the surviving child, demanded extraordinarily careful handling. The intersection of terminal illness, financial fraud, and family annihilation created investigative complexities that required expertise from multiple disciplines.
What was going on with the money situation, another one with the health situation. I think the big thing is to try not to speculate that there's any one reason like something like this would happen. Homicide and suicide is usually much, much more complex than just one reason.
But the physical evidence only told part of the story. Investigators began digging into Emily's digital footprint, and what they found revealed a woman drowning under the weight of impossible circumstances while desperately trying to maintain a facade of strength for her followers. Her TikTok account became a roadmap of deteriorating mental health, with posts about navigating her husband's terminal brain cancer, battling her own depression, and struggling to be the mother her children deserved while watching their father slowly disappear. What investigators couldn't determine from Emily's online presence was whether she had been receiving professional mental health treatment. Her posts suggested that friends and family had encouraged her to seek therapy, but there was no evidence she had followed through with formal treatment. The gap between recognizing the need for help and actually accessing it would become a central theme in understanding how this tragedy unfolded, particularly when caring for a terminally ill spouse often leaves no time or energy for self-care. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're watching from today, and if this case hits you, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's next. As investigators dug deeper into the Long family's finances, they uncovered Emily's elaborate embezzlement scheme at Wingett's. Derek Fisher, owner of the Hampton location, revealed that Emily had stolen approximately $660,000 between January 2023 and July 2025. The timing of this theft period overlapped significantly with Ryan's cancer diagnosis and treatment, raising questions about whether Emily's financial crimes were motivated by mounting medical bills or represented a separate psychological break. Additionally, glioblastoma treatment is devastatingly expensive, even with insurance. Radiation therapy, chemotherapy, specialized medications, and frequent hospital visits can quickly exhaust a family's financial resources. If Ryan's cancer treatment was creating crushing debt, Emily's embezzlement might have been a desperate attempt to keep their family financially afloat while her husband fought for his life. The psychological pressure of stealing money to pay for her husband's medical care, knowing the theft would eventually be discovered, could have created an impossible psychological trap. But the embezzlement also represented another layer of deception in Emily's increasingly complicated life. She was hiding her financial crimes from her dying husband, protecting him from additional stress while he battled cancer. She was maintaining a social media presence that showed strength and hope, while privately drowning in despair. She was trying to be a single parent in everything but name, while working full-time and managing a complex theft scheme. The cognitive load of maintaining so many lies and facades simultaneously can push anyone toward a complete psychological breakdown. The question of why Emily spared her youngest child becomes even more complex when viewed through the lens of Ryan's terminal diagnosis. Emily had posted about having difficulty addressing her toddler's struggles, but caring for a 3-year-old while watching a spouse die from brain cancer creates impossible competing demands. Did she view the youngest child as too innocent to understand the horror of their father's disease? Was the toddler spared because Emily saw them as the only family member who hadn't yet been touched by the trauma of watching Ryan deteriorate? The surviving child was immediately placed in the care of maternal and paternal grandparents and an aunt. But the long-term psychological impact of surviving such trauma, particularly in the context of losing both parents simultaneously, remains unclear. This 3-year-old will grow up knowing their mother killed their father and siblings, but chose to let them live, while also processing the fact that their father was already dying from an incurable disease. The layers of grief, confusion, and survivor's guilt this child will carry are almost incomprehensible. Ryan Long's colleagues at Oyster River Middle School faced a particularly complex grieving process. Their friend and colleague had been fighting terminal brain cancer while trying to continue his work, helping children navigate emotional challenges. Now they had to process his murder at the hands of his wife, who had been publicly documenting her struggles with his diagnosis. The school district immediately offered counseling services, recognizing that a tragedy involving terminal illness and family annihilation would create traumatic ripples throughout the entire educational community. The investigation also revealed the devastating irony of Ryan's profession intersecting with his medical diagnosis and ultimate fate. As a school psychologist, he would have been trained to recognize warning signs of mental health crises and family dysfunction, but glioblastoma attacks the very organ responsible for personality, judgment, and emotional regulation. The cancer may have been gradually eroding Ryan's ability to recognize or respond to his wife's deteriorating mental state, even as his professional training would have normally made him sensitive to such changes. Community members who knew the Long family described them as devoted parents who attended school events and seemed committed to maintaining normalcy despite Ryan's diagnosis. But neighbors on Moharimet Drive had no indication that Emily's stress was escalating toward violence. Her ability to maintain a facade of coping while privately planning her family's destruction demonstrates how effectively people can hide psychological crisis, particularly when they're already dealing with public challenges like terminal illness that generate community sympathy and support. The surviving 3-year-old became the focus of unprecedented community support, but also represented the most haunting aspect of Emily's decision-making process. Why spare one child while systematically killing the others? Child psychologists theorizing about Emily's mental state suggest several possibilities, all of them deeply disturbing. Perhaps the toddler was seen as too young to remember their father's illness and decline. Maybe Emily viewed the youngest as the only family member who hadn't been traumatized by watching Ryan deteriorate. Or possibly, Emily's psychological break was interrupted by some remaining maternal instinct that couldn't complete the final murder. The child's placement with extended family provided stability, but the long-term psychological impact of being the sole survivor of their mother's rampage, in the context of also losing their father to terminal illness, remains unknown. This 3-year-old will grow up carrying the weight of multiple traumas: survivor's guilt, confusion about their mother's love, grief for their murdered siblings, and the knowledge that their father was already dying when their mother decided to end his suffering on her terms. The Oyster River School District's response highlighted how tragedies involving terminal illness and family annihilation create unique challenges for communities trying to process such violence. Students who had been helped by Ryan Long in his role as school psychologist suddenly found themselves needing the kind of support he would have provided, while also trying to understand how someone whose job was helping children with problems could become a victim of his own wife's complete psychological breakdown. The intersection of Ryan's professional identity and his role as both cancer patient and murder victim created particular difficulties for the school community. How do you maintain faith in mental health support systems when a trained psychologist either couldn't recognize or couldn't address the crisis developing in his own household? His glioblastoma diagnosis complicated this question. Brain cancer can fundamentally alter personality, judgment, and emotional regulation, potentially leaving Ryan unable to recognize warning signs his professional training would normally have made obvious. Emily's TikTok presence became a case study in how social media can simultaneously reveal and conceal mental health crises. Her posts documented someone clearly drowning in caregiver stress, anticipatory grief, and depression. Yet they also demonstrated her ability to maintain a facade of determination and hope. The platform became her outlet for expressing struggles she couldn't share elsewhere, but it also became part of the performance of strength she felt obligated to maintain for her children and community. Mental health advocates seized on Emily's case to highlight the specific challenges facing caregivers of terminally ill family members. Caregiver burnout is a recognized psychological condition that can lead to depression, anxiety, and in extreme cases, thoughts of harm toward oneself or others. Emily's social media posts suggested people had encouraged her to seek therapy, but accessing mental health care while managing a dying spouse's medical needs, working full-time, and raising 3 young children creates practical barriers that can seem insurmountable. The timing of Emily's psychological breakdown also raises questions about how society supports families dealing with terminal illness. Glioblastoma patients and their families often receive tremendous community support during the initial diagnosis and treatment phases, but the grinding reality of months or years of decline can leave caregivers increasingly isolated as friends and extended families struggle to maintain engagement with such overwhelming sadness. The Madbury Community's vigil at United Church provided a space for collective grieving, but it also highlighted how ill-equipped most communities are to process family annihilation cases that involve terminal illness. Unlike random violence or sudden tragedies, familicide in the context of cancer forces people to confront questions about suffering, mercy, and the limits of human endurance that have no comfortable answers. The case attracted national media attention partly because it challenged common assumptions about family annihilation. Most familicide cases involve male perpetrators who kill their families as final acts of control, often in the context of divorce or financial ruin. Emily's case involved a woman who appeared to be motivated by a complex mixture of anticipatory grief, financial desperation, and a desire to spare her family from what she perceived as inevitable suffering. The investigation's conclusion that multiple factors contributed to the tragedy rather than a single identifiable cause, reflects the complex reality of how terminal illness can destroy families even before the patient dies. Emily's transformation from devoted caregiver to family annihilator demonstrates how combinations of grief, stress, financial pressure, and untreated mental illness can overwhelm even strong people's coping mechanisms and lead to unthinkable decisions. The Long family massacre stands as a devastating reminder that terminal illness creates victims beyond the diagnosed patient and that caregiver mental health requires as much attention and support as the physical care of the sick. Emily's case forces uncomfortable questions about whether our medical system adequately addresses the psychological needs of families watching loved ones die slowly, and whether we provide sufficient support for people drowning in the impossible responsibilities of caring for terminally ill family members. The Madbury Community's vigil at United Church provided a space for collective grieving, but it also highlighted how ill-equipped most communities are to process family annihilation cases that involve terminal illness. Unlike random violence or sudden tragedies, familicide in the context of cancer forces people to confront questions about suffering, mercy, and the limits of human endurance that have no comfortable answers. The case attracted national media attention partly because it challenged common assumptions about family annihilation. Most familicide cases involve male perpetrators who kill their families as final acts of control, often in the context of divorce or financial ruin. Emily's case involved a woman who appeared to be motivated by a complex mixture of anticipatory grief, financial desperation, and a desire to spare her family from what she perceived as inevitable suffering. The investigation's conclusion that multiple factors contributed to the tragedy rather than a single identifiable cause reflects the complex reality of how terminal illness can destroy families even before the patient dies. Emily's transformation from devoted caregiver to family annihilator demonstrates how combinations of grief, stress, financial pressure, and untreated mental illness can overwhelm even strong people's coping mechanisms and lead to unthinkable decisions. This case isn't isolated. There have been other heartbreaking stories where a mother turned on her own family. In another tragic case, a mother killed her 2 babies, and the motive pointed back to her husband. It's devastating, and sadly, not unfamiliar. We've covered something similar before, the Worley family murders, a case that still haunts many of us to this day.
In 2016, this small house on South Madison Street in Darlington, Indiana, became the setting for one of the most haunting crimes the state had ever seen.
Brandy Worley sentenced for a chilling crime that horrified central Indiana.
On the night of November 17th, 2 children, 7-year-old Tyler and 3-year-old Charlie, were tucked into bed by their mother. Tyler had spent the day at school, still wearing the same clothes when he laid down to sleep. Charlie was curled up in her crib, wrapped in the same soft blanket she always clung to. Nothing about the evening seemed unusual, but by the next morning, both children were dead, and their killer never left the home. In fact, she made the call herself.
203 South Madison Street.
In what town?
Darlington.
Hey, what's going on there?
I stabbed myself and I killed my 2 children.
You stabbed yourself and your 2 children?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what's your name?
Brandy Worley.
Brandy what?
Worley.
Hours earlier, Brandy had walked into a local Walmart and purchased a knife. Then she went home, fed the kids dinner, and waited. Once everyone was asleep, she descended into methodical cruelty. She waited until Jason, her husband, had gone to sleep in the basement. Then she walked up the stairs with the knife hidden in her robe. In less than 10 minutes, both of their children had been killed, stabbed multiple times in their beds. When she was finished, Brandy turned the knife on herself. She stabbed her own neck, then picked up the phone and calmly dialed 911.
And where are the children at?
In my daughter's room on the floor.
In your daughter's room on the floor? Okay. What's your phone number, Brandy? And what caused you to do this today?
My husband wanted a divorce and wanted to take my kid. I won't let him find my kid.
Okay, and how old are your children?
7 and 3.
So the big question is, why would a mother do this just because of a divorce? And why with such calm detachment? To answer that question, let's go back to a time when everything looked picture perfect. No crime scene. Just a quiet street in Darlington, Indiana, where the Worley family lived in a simple home on South Madison Street. Darlington wasn't the kind of place where tragedy was expected. Less than 900 people, tucked just 40 minutes from Indianapolis, where everyone waved hello, and nothing bad ever seemed to happen. Inside that home were 30-year-old Brandy, her husband Jason, 31, and their 2 children, 7-year-old Tyler Daniel Clinton Worley, and his little sister, 3-year-old Charlie Rose Jean Worley. From the outside, they were the definition of a happy young family, the kind people in town saw at school events and library visits, smiling, laughing. normal. Tyler was the kind of kid every teacher loved. Born on September 17, 2009, he had just started first grade at Sugar Creek Elementary School. He was already obsessed with sports: basketball, football, soccer, baseball. If it involved running and a ball, Tyler wanted in. But he wasn't just athletic. He was thoughtful. He wanted to work with computers when he grew up, just like his dad. Jason once said Tyler was the kind of boy who could walk into a room full of strangers and walk out with 20 new friends. On the other hand, Charlie was born on September 26, 2013. At just 3 years old, she had a busier schedule than most adults. Preschool at the Wilson Early Learning Center, dance classes, basketball camp, and weekly trips to the local library for story time. She loved dressing up, especially when someone braided her hair. Jason said she was a ball of light in a tutu, always on the go, always smiling. Now, Brandy and Jason had met in 2007, fell in love quickly, and got married in 2009, the same year Tyler was born. Jason worked as a software engineer, and Brandy stayed home to raise the kids. To their neighbors, the Worleys seemed completely normal. They attended school events, helped with dance rehearsals, and played in the yard. There were no fights in public, no calls to police, no signs that the perfect picture was slowly tearing at the edges. In fact, the day before the murders, November 16, 2016, had been nothing short of ordinary. It was a Thursday. Tyler had gone to school. Charlie had a dance performance that evening, and the whole family showed up to cheer her on. Afterward, they drove home, had dinner together, and wound down like they always did. However, later that night, Brandy made a quick trip to Walmart to buy pipe cleaners for one of Tyler's school projects. The Walmart was just 11 minutes away, in Crawfordsville. Brandy went alone. No one suspected that her shopping trip wasn't just for craft supplies. When she returned, the kids were winding down for bed. Brandy and Jason played with them for a while, then Jason helped them settle into their blankets for the night. Tyler curled into his Spider-Man bedding. Charlie snuggled into her crib with her favorite blanket. But then Brandy said something strange. She asked Jason if he wanted to sleep on the couch, but he declined. He preferred to go down to the basement, where he'd been sleeping recently. And this raises a question many people would later ask. Why wasn't Jason sleeping beside his wife? The truth is, like many couples, Brandy and Jason had been struggling. Arguments had become more frequent. But this wasn't just about bickering or stress. The problems ran deeper. In fact, Jason had just filed for divorce the day before. They had been together for 9 years, married for 7. But Jason had finally reached his breaking point. He believed Brandy had been cheating on him with their neighbor, and he had proof, painful, undeniable proof. This wasn't just suspicion. This was betrayal confirmed through texts, photos, and late-night messages she thought he'd never see. Jason had noticed that Brandy became overly protective of her phone. She changed her password and kept it close. So, using his skills as a software engineer, he installed monitoring software that let him view her messages. What he discovered crushed him. Brandy had been flirting and texting their 51-year-old neighbor, a man Jason thought was just a friend. One message stood out. "I'm all covered in frosting. Want to lick it off?" Jason wanted to believe it was a joke, just Brandy's twisted sense of humor. But soon, he saw more. Graphic messages, Snapchats sent from the bathroom at work, plans to meet up while Jason was away. He read them all. He watched their affair unfold in real time. The emotional damage was overwhelming that Jason turned to the internet for help. On Reddit, under the username Jason in Hell, he shared his pain. His post, titled, "I'm having a hard time coping with my wife cheating on me with our neighbor," went viral. In it, he detailed the betrayal, how Brandy denied everything until he showed her the evidence. Even then, she minimized it, claimed it was just a mistake, that it never went all the way, that it was his fault for being too busy at work. And then she threatened him. If he left her, she said, he'd never see his kids again. She threatened to use his past mental health history, a self-harm attempt in high school, as ammunition in court. She said she'd prove him unfit. Jason was heartbroken, scared, and stuck. He didn't want to lose his kids, so he stayed. For a while. But the resentment kept building. Eventually, he realized he couldn't pretend anymore. He didn't want his children growing up in a house filled with secrets and tension. So he decided to leave, and that's when things took a dark, irreversible turn. Jason's next Reddit post said it all. Brandy refused counseling, refused to change. He had finally contacted an attorney. He said he was ready to get his kids out, to start over. He thanked strangers online for giving him the courage. But no one, not Jason, not anyone reading those posts, could have imagined what would happen next. Because the very next morning, his children were gone.
Now, records show they found that 7-year-old Tyler and 3-year-old Charlie had deep cuts on their throats and that a combat-style knife was found in her daughter's bedroom. Police say Worley told them her husband was divorcing her and wanted custody of their children. They also say she specifically told them she did not want him to take the kids. Her husband tells police Worley yelled, "Now you can't take the kids from me," as he came upstairs to find the children.
After the murders, a press conference was held. There was outrage, confusion, shock. The Montgomery County Sheriff addressed the public with trembling words.
While the dispatcher kept Worley on the telephone, the first deputy arrived at the residence and confirmed that 2 children were in fact deceased at 4:43 a.m.
Now, Brandy had been involved in a minor car accident once, but beyond that, nothing to prepare anyone for this. Jason returned to Reddit after the killings, writing again in grief. He said he felt like he had failed to protect his children. He shared how he returned to the house after the crime scene was cleaned, but he swore he could still smell the blood in Charlie's room. He wasn't sure if it was real or just trauma clinging to his senses. Either way, he knew he couldn't stay there. He packed his things and left. Jason questioned everything. Why had Brandy asked him to sleep on the couch that night? Did she plan to kill him too? Could he have saved the kids if he'd stayed upstairs? Would things be different if he'd left earlier? Or if he'd stayed married? These are the kinds of questions that torment a father who did everything he thought he could, but still lost everything. "I had one job," Jason later wrote. "A father's job is to protect his children, and I failed." He set up a GoFundMe to help with the funeral expenses. The campaign was shared by YouTuber Philip DeFranco, who discovered Jason's story on Reddit and used his massive platform to bring attention to the tragedy. Thanks to the support of viewers and readers across the internet, the fund raised enough to give Tyler and Charlie the farewell they deserved. But no amount of money could undo what had been done, and no amount of sympathy could answer the one question that still echoes through every post, every headline, every courtroom. Why? In a town as small and close-knit as Darlington, where everyone knew each other by name, grief spread like wildfire. Within days, the town organized a candlelight vigil at the local church. People came not just to mourn, but to try to understand how something so unthinkable had happened right in their midst. There weren't enough chairs. It was standing room only. 5 days after the murders, the funeral for Tyler and Charlie was held at the Darlington Community Center. Their tiny caskets were surrounded by flowers, stuffed animals, and handwritten letters. The children's mother, the woman who had taken their lives, was not there. But Jason was. And so was nearly everyone else in Darlington. Hundreds showed up, some in tears, others simply silent. A few brought candles, many brought memories, and every single one of them carried heartbreak. The Worley family released a statement during the funeral, saying, "We are shocked and saddened by the sudden loss of our beloved Tyler and Charlie. They meant the world to our family, and words cannot describe our feelings of devastation. We are thankful for the outpouring of support from our friends, family, and the community. We will grieve forever the loss of our precious little boy and girl." However, the case was far from over. 11 days after the murders, Brandy was finally released from the hospital. Her neck wound had healed enough, but she wasn't walking out to freedom. The moment she was stable enough to move, she was transferred directly to the Montgomery County Jail and charged with 2 counts of murder. Her bail was denied. Her defense attorney, Mark Inman, met with her shortly after. He said that in their first few meetings, Brandy showed emotion. She cried. But after that, something changed. She shut down. No more emotion, no explanations, just a blank stare. She refused to speak about what happened. Inman said he couldn't find any clear-cut reason for the murders, and Brandy wasn't offering one. Her behavior puzzled even her own legal team. Some believed it was trauma, others thought it was coldness. The defense hinted they might pursue an insanity plea, but first, Brandy had to undergo a full psychiatric evaluation. The results weren't made public at the time, but prosecutors were already building a case that would dismantle any claim of mental instability. In fact, the more investigators dug, the more premeditated the crime looked. They discovered that on November 15th, 2 days before the murders, Brandy had learned Jason was moving forward with divorce. He had contacted an attorney. He was ready to go, and she knew it. In the days leading to the murder, she kept things deceptively normal. She took the kids out with her mother. Jason came home from work, and the family went to Charlie's dance recital that evening. But what Brandy did next exposed her true intentions. That night, she told Jason she needed to buy pipe cleaners for a school project. But she lied. That trip to Walmart was not about craft supplies. It was a cover. Surveillance footage and receipts revealed that she had bought a Ka-bar combat knife, the kind used by the United States Marine Corps. Not a kitchen knife. Not something from a dollar aisle. A weapon designed for combat. When she came home, she hid the knife in Tyler's room. Jason tucked the kids into bed. He went downstairs to the basement. The house went quiet. And then, Brandy made her move. She walked into Tyler's room, took out the knife, and woke him up gently. Not with fear, not with rage, but with a lie. She asked him if he wanted to have a sleepover in his little sister's room. Being 7 years old, Tyler was probably excited. A midweek sleepover meant breaking the rules. Something fun, something special. He had no idea what was coming. Brandy led Tyler into Charlie's room, and once both children were together, she began to stab her son first. He likely screamed, maybe tried to run. But Charlie, only 3, heard something and asked what was happening. Brandy told her to go back to sleep. She did. She trusted her mother. Once Tyler was gone, Brandy turned the knife on Charlie. The details of the attack were described as overkill by the prosecution. There was no mercy, no hesitation, just brutality. When it was over, Brandy stabbed herself in the neck, then calmly called 911 and told the dispatcher what she had done. Before the case ever reached trial, Brandy changed her plea to guilty. There would be no courtroom drama, no jury to convince. The only thing left was sentencing and a chance for Jason to speak. The court asked Jason what kind of sentence he believed Brandy should get. He didn't give a long statement. He didn't cry. He just said, "I never want to see her again. Out of sight, out of mind." The judge, Harry Siamas, asked Brandy directly if she had anything to say, any explanation, any apology. She said nothing. She didn't cry. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't even look at Jason, and the court took that silence as her final act of cruelty. Brandy Worley was sentenced to 65 years for the murder of Charlie and 55 years for Tyler. 120 years total. No possibility of parole. The sentences would run consecutively at Rockville Correctional Facility. Judge Siamas said, "Everyone wants to know why. Why would a mother kill her children? But sometimes there is no explanation. Sometimes darkness exists in the world, and it finds its way into people's hearts." After the trial, Jason said that hearing Brandy talk about the murders on the 911 call and later to police, like she was describing a grocery list, was the most painful part of it all. She never showed any emotion, never even seemed to understand what she'd done. He said, "I just want to move forward. I want to protect the memory of my kids." As of 2025, Brandy Worley remains locked away inside the cold, gray walls of the Indiana Women's Prison. She's not a mother anymore, not a wife, not even a name that brings comfort to anyone. She's a number, a ghost of the woman who once rocked her children to sleep and later stole their last breaths. Inmates who've crossed paths with her say she barely speaks. She doesn't cry. She doesn't scream. She simply exists, quiet, unemotional, like she's detached from the reality of what she did. She eats when she's told, moves when she's told, and when her name is called for mandatory therapy or evaluations, she shows up and offers almost nothing. Her most recent psychiatric evaluation diagnosed her with major depressive disorder, but to the outside world, that doesn't matter anymore. No diagnosis can explain away what she did. No label can soften the fact that she murdered her 2 children with a knife she bought for that very purpose. The world didn't need a psychological report to know that something inside Brandy was broken far beyond repair. Meanwhile, Jason Worley, the man Brandy tried to emotionally destroy before physically destroying their family, is still standing. He's older now, in his early 40s. He moved away from Darlington long ago and started over in a different city. He remarried. He has more children. And although photos show a man smiling beside his new family, those closest to him say grief still lives in his eyes, just below the surface. Jason never became a public figure. He never gave lengthy interviews or tried to spin his story for attention. He just kept living, quietly, day by day. But online, in the same Reddit threads where he once opened up about Brandy's betrayal, he's made a few rare appearances. In one heartbreaking post, he admitted that he still tortures himself over that night. Over the moment Brandy asked him to sleep on the couch, and he chose the basement instead. He wonders if that was her test, if she wanted him upstairs to stop her, or worse, if she wanted to kill him too. He'll never know. But the part that breaks people the most isn't what happened. It's what should have happened instead. If that night had gone differently, if Brandy had just left like most people do during a divorce, Tyler and Charlie would still be alive. Tyler would be 15 now. He'd be in high school, probably obsessed with football and video games, maybe teaching himself how to code. He was sharp, curious, always asking how things worked. Jason used to say Tyler could charm anyone. He'd make friends at the grocery store. He had that glow, that natural warmth you can't teach. Charlie would be 11. She'd be in middle school, maybe still wearing sparkly sneakers and asking for glitter in her hair. She loved dance class, loved story time. She had this way of making people smile without saying a word. She was the kind of child who sang to herself when no one was watching and always wanted to help with the dishes, even when she wasn't tall enough to reach the sink. But instead of growing up, their names are carved in stone. Their birthdays are remembered with candles and tears, not balloons and laughter. The rooms that once echoed with their voices are silent now. Photos are all that remain, pictures frozen in time, of two kids who never had the chance to become who they were meant to be. The Reddit community that once stood by Jason, offering advice, cheering him on as he tried to leave a toxic marriage, was devastated when the truth came out. They hadn't just followed a story about infidelity, they had watched, unknowingly, as a double homicide unfolded in real time. Some users felt guilty. Some wondered if encouraging Jason to leave had pushed Brandy too far. But none of this was their fault, and it wasn't Jason's either. The blame rests on Brandy Worley alone. Now I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think could have happened if Jason had slept on the couch that night instead of the basement? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've made it this far, be sure to check out this next video. I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you once again for watching.